All right, I call to order the Millersville Board of Commissioners regular meeting Tuesday, August 21st, 2018 at 5:30 p.m. If everyone would please stand for the invocation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father God, we just give you honor this day, Lord, this day. Heavenly Father, we ask you to be with us this evening in our meeting, God, and give us wisdom and understanding. And Lord, lead, God, and direct us in all that we might be mindful of you, Heavenly Father. And Lord, that our decisions will be based upon your decision. And God, we trust in you. And Lord, we ask you, Lord, to be with those who serve our nation, and Lord, and their families. And Lord, be with those less fortunate. God, we give you all honor and all glory from the foot of the cross we pray. In Christ's name, amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 is public hearings. We'll have 3 of them. I'll open each one of them up for discussion. If anyone wants to speak on any one of them, you'll need to stand. I'll need your name and your address for the recorder. To the whatever the topic is. The first one is ordinance 18-701, rezone 7721 South Swift Road, a single parcel, Robertson County map 126, partial 54.00 from commercial C1 and residential R1 to residential 5. I'm now open for public comments. Hearing none, I'll close that public hearing. Second one, ordinance 18-702, rezone a portion of a parcel on Buffalo Road located east of Interstate I-65, known as Robertson County map 126, parcel 79.00, from residential R1 to residential R5. I'm now open for public comment.
Is that the plat that's along
Name and address.
Teresa Carr, Oak Spring, Spring Hollow Road. And would this be a time for questions as well for clarification?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mayor, if I could, I have some graphics that could be helpful to some of the folks in the audience as well as you, if you'd like. You'll note here that the blue area is what we're considering tonight.
Okay.
So it's the portion of the 155 acres to the rear, off of Bethel Road. You have 27 acres of
This is
commercial in
where
the
the
front.
soybeans are right here.
Actually, the soy goes quite a ways back up into here, but yes,
Okay.
predominantly in the front and then back up into here. But the blue area is what they're considering tonight.
And that's the 155.
It's a
That's
portion.
127 acres of the 155.
Okay, is that okay?
Absolutely, we have extras if anybody would like them here.
Please. Could you carry her with
I certainly would, yes.
Okay, clarify that
Yeah,
one.
I'm happy to help us here. Anybody else?
All right, hang on, we're gonna do it one at a time. This lady's gonna speak now.
So the proposal we're reading at this time is to change from R1 to R5.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My question with R5 is on an acre lot, how many houses would be allowable on an acre lot?
R1 is 5-acre lots, R5 is 10,000 square foot lots, so approximately 4 lots per acre.
4 lots per acre.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I have a concern on 4 lots per acre. 3 of my concerns. One is we have children in the neighborhood, in our neighborhood, along that Spring Hollow. It is a dead-end area. If there's access taken from the end of Spring Hollow into that subdivision, one, we have many young children in that area that use the roads for their body. Two, my second concern is I do not think, my husband and I, Robert, went to, a meeting in the past year at the community center in reference to issues with water pressure problems further up Bethel Road past the Shell, station. And I don't see how that land would be able to, would be able to handle what they would need for water in that area. Our pressure is not as bad as other areas, our water pressure, but it's not the best either. So I would be very opposed to allowing homes that were that dense in that area. And if there's any clarification that you can give us on rezone, it sounds like R5 is granting a greater area. R5 thing. And I know I have 3 minutes.
No, ma'am, you have no limit, speak as long as you like.
Says objective is to provide residential housing in a rural setting while preserving, minimizing impacts on the scenic quality. And it says large, not residential, so I'm confused with how is that a large, not residential if you have 4 houses on 1 acre? That sounds contradictory to me. So if there's some clarification we could get on that, that might be really helpful, or appease some of the concerns we have.
Sure, I'd be happy to answer those questions. Number one, you asked about whether that there would be a continuance of Spring Hollow Road. Our engineers have looked at that. It seems unlikely at this time. While the right-of-way was created to the subdivision limits, because of the steepness of that hollow back there, it is unlikely and probably very cost prohibitive to continue that road through. If that project, now keep in mind, this is early in the process. There's no development plan. We don't know what they're putting in there. They're requesting more density at this point. I anticipate in the future having more information come, because there's probably another 4, 5, 6 hearings to occur if somebody is coming in. But at this point, Mr. Jones hasn't provided any information to the city other than asking to increase the density, which means more lots. Instead of 5-acre lots, 1/4-acre lots for all intents and purposes. Which, by the way, is a very typical lot size in subdivisions. Like further to the east of you all, Blue Ridge and Skyline and Sassafras, those little subdivisions there, that's your typical 10,000 square foot lot.
Okay.
So it's not as though people are on top of each other, but as far as the road continuing through, it's unlikely because it is so steep. Even our fire chief looked at it as maybe a secondary access, for emergencies. But building through that deep hollow there, I'm not confident that somebody's going to spend the money to do that. So more than likely, Spring Hollow will remain a dead-end road, as best I can tell. Your second question was on water issues and the availability. You are correct. There were some public workshops on the West Bethel utility improvements. Actually, that report is just wrapping up right now and should be ready for the public to see. Essentially, it's showing that there is a definite need for water on the west side of the interstate. On the east side of the interstate, there is more than adequate water that White House Utility District has out there. They have a number of lines that run east on Bethel Road. The biggest one, I think, is either 16 or 20 inch that supplies most of White House, the city of White House. There's also an 8 inch and a 4 inch out there. It's my understanding that White House Utility District has adequate water for this acreage, however many units it turns out to be. It seems like they have an unlimited, it's not unlimited, but they have an abundant supply on the east side of the interstate. So that won't impact anything on the west side. The problem that you're probably well aware is that there's not enough water going underneath the interstate, and what limited water there is going under the interstate goes to Ridgetop. Goes right through Millersville into the next city. So, but we're working through that as well. But that's a whole nother issue that. Yes, ma'am, yes. And then the third question about your lot size, as I mentioned, this is a typical subdivision lot size, 10,000 square feet. And then, of course, if there is a project that comes through, I'm gonna say more than likely they're not building on the entire 155 acres because there is so much steep land in there. So I don't think your vision of this big giant subdivision like you see in some other areas, I don't think that's what you're gonna see here. It's just not practical. And I mean, I've walked on some of it back in there, and I can't imagine building a home on some of those.
There's about 50 or 60 acres that are either wooded or steep.
Yes, sir. So about a third of the land out there is probably unbuildable. What's really unique though is in the case of Quailwood, is that one of the deeper ravines runs between that property and Quailwood Estates, with the exception of the very front.
Yes, that's very helpful information.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name's Billy Mullins, and I live 204 Spring Hollow Road, which is across from where. And I've lived there since 1986, so I pretty much have seen pretty much all that grow up in here. And really, when you think about it, I've really been lucky it's been this long since there's been any kind of development to actually happen over there. And my main concern, of course, we don't have any blueprint, anything of what they're wanting to do. And my main concern is the type of housing they're wanting to put in there. And of course, the Bethel Road, are you the developer or?
No, sir, I work for the city.
Okay, all right. And of course, you addressed the Spring Hollow thing, which is what I live on. And of course, you're always hearing these rumors and talk, so we don't really know anything. It kind of snuck up on us as a subdivision. We have a sign sitting up there in the field that you have to get out of the car to look at. I mean, if nobody had told somebody it was even there, we wouldn't even know about it. But anyway, the Spring Hollow deal is because I was concerned, I was told anyway, by somebody else that was gonna be the entranceway into that subdivision. And I didn't want that flow of traffic. I would just put a lot of traffic on that road. And I
don't see that.
was hoping that wouldn't be the case.
That would have to get through several meetings and a lot of people on a lot of different boards for that to happen.
And I was just curious, how are they planning on entering and exiting that subdivision? They're gonna have their own dedicated entranceway over there?
Well, our code requires, for any development that exceeds, I believe at 30 units, it requires 2 separate entrances or a main boulevard type of entrance, that's at least, I think, 30 or 32 feet wide, so we can get our fire apparatus in and out. Personally, I prefer 2 entrances on larger projects, so that you always have a secondary, emergency exit, if you will, if there's an accident at one, or if there's, God forbid, a fire and you need to get folks out, and one of the entrances is blocked. So at the very least, they'll be having, once we start seeing the subdivision plan come in, which we have not yet.
Right.
We haven't seen any kind of site plans from the Jones, and so we're not quite sure where we are.
And that makes it kind of difficult for us not knowing exactly what.
And right now, there's no development plan other than they're trying to up the density. They're trying to get more lots for, instead of 5-acre lots.
I talked to Mr. Jones last week, the week before last, he goes to church before I go. And I asked him about this deal, and of course, the property hadn't sold. He said that the developers had approached him about making these changes and all, and he told them that, he told me he didn't even know what they were wanting to do. And he said that he told them to go to the city find out if they get done what they want done, then come back to him with a proposal to buy. So apparently, Mr. Jones is not the one asking for the rezoning, it's the developers themselves.
Well, and at this point, we can't consider any plans until we get through these first steps.
Right.
And the first step is before we even look at a subdivision, we need to make sure that the zoning allows for a
Right.
subdivision.
And
So
another,
once we get through that, then we'll have additional hearings,
right,
and there'll be additional public notice to get you all engaged and make sure that you all know we're not here to hide anything. And these meetings not only are open to the public, but we live stream them on YouTube, or you can go back and look at the videos even after the meetings. So, I mean, we're an open door city here, and my desk in my office is always open if y'all have.
it would be
have
beneficial
questions,
if they ever have an actual plan.
Well, and I'm anticipating that happening sooner than later. But again, we have limited information right now.
One other comment that was made, and I kind of find it humorous when they say that those hollers are so deep and all, they can't or won't build houses on. Go over there and look in Quailwood Estates, down, I believe it's Glenwood, is that what the street? And you look at those homes there, they're built down on the hill just as steep as they are over there, some of them are just like this. So if they want to put it there, they'll put it there. I don't think there'll be anything, unless there's some kind of ordinance.
I think what we was referring to is when you get into that steep terrain, you cannot put 4 to an acre.
Yeah, well, I agree with you there.
That's not possible.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but the way these developers are now, if they think they can make $1 off a piece of land, they gonna put something there. We've got one in the subdivision right now, that'll builder come in there and throw it down there, didn't follow any kind of
We know which
restriction,
one.
anything.
Trust
We don't wanna see,
He's
be
supposed to.
surrounded by all of that. But,
He's supposed to be.
I don't know how he got that far into it, with it getting completed, to be honest with you.
Well, it never got completed.
He tried to sell it at one time.
He got to where he needed to CO and couldn't go no further.
Yeah, I'm glad of that. But anyway, that's my main concern, just keep us informed as to what's going on, because it's, we're all concerned, being live there, we got properties, we don't want to lose back. I know it's just Millersville, it's not Brentwood, but we still are proud of our place and our properties.
Well, I've spoken with some of the residents in the Quailwood development or subdivision. And I've left an open invitation to you all that if you do want to have community meetings, I know you have kind of an informal homeowners group. I won't call you an association, but a homeowners group. I'd be more than happy to sit down with you all and or meet with you regularly. That's, I'm happy to keep you all up to speed on what's happening.
My main concern is that the board will wait and see what he's wanting, what they're wanting to do, and actually before you just pass it, and then when it comes to.
We won't approve anything without full site
Right,
drawings. I mean,
good.
Complete drawings, and it has to go through 2 meetings in the planning commission.
No, it depends on if it's a subdivision or a site plan. If it's a subdivision, something this size, we'll ask for 3 separate meetings on that. We'll begin with a conceptual plan, then we'll move into preliminary plat and then to final plat. But even when it's being platted, if there are pods, development pods, then that will probably go through an individual site planning process as well. So that's a 4th meeting or even a 5th meeting, depending upon. So we have many months left of meetings before they're putting a shovel in the ground out there.
The days of going down to City Hall and getting the permit are over. Trust me.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm wondering about that, I call it pasture behind us, it's all soybean back there.
Can I get your name and address?
Norman Slade, 300 Spring Hollow Road, I'm the last house on the right,
Hey, Norman.
been up there 20 years.
Here you look at that.
Okay,
This is it right here. There's where you live. So it's right there where that thicket is in that field all the way back.
gotcha, thank you. The reason it's important to me is I can, when the leaves are off the tree, see the community on the other side of the soybeans. And so that doesn't sit well because we built, they have, I guess that's Sumner County or is that Robertson? If you go out on the highway and turn back to come in behind,
I guess that would be Turner's Bend. That's the closest one.
and that dead ends back in there, it looks like, kind of like we are, one way in, one way out. And so I just wonder that when the leaves are off the trees, I can see all the way through to homes on the other side of that pasture. And so, for me, if I were a developer, I would look about the other side as well as this side, if they're gonna look at it, if that makes any sense. Why would they have one way in, one way out, when they're gonna be building right there at homes that's been there a lot longer than I have?
And it very well may be, I don't know if they have connectivity to the property in the back, I don't know, I'd have to look at an aerial
Maybe,
map.
Mr. Slater, are you on Spring Hollow? So you back
Yes,
up to
sir,
the-
300 Spring Hollow Road, right
So
on.
you have the soybean behind you.
Yes, sir.
That actually has been zoned commercial since 2005. Mr. Jones rezoned that more than a decade ago to commercial. Now, to give you peace of mind, we have rules in our zoning ordinance that require certain buffering between commercial and residential zoning and uses. So, and I don't recall them off the top of my head, but generally they're visual buffers or landscape buffers, or even berms in some cases. But between commercial and residential, we do require a minimum buffering to protect the two, especially to protect the residents. But that's been commercial for more than a decade now. So theoretically, a shopping center could have come in for a site plan with a single meeting and a single review would have been enough to build a shopping center perhaps.
If I could just show you,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Slade, right there.
Okay.
So the back of this house is looking this way.
Oh, looking to the west. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's seen Turner's Bill.
We're looking,
No,
my house is right here, so I'm looking toward the south.
I think Mr. Slade, by the way, I left you a voicemail this afternoon. Thank you for stopping by to see me. I'm sorry I wasn't here. Now, he's looking to the west, so do you see the machinery movers building through that large warehouse or whatnot behind the old truck stop?
I see a great deal right there. I see where, if, we're talking about so many things there. I mean, they
Yes.
start property. Across from the soybean on the other side, you see where they've laid out everything. And that's been laying dormant there for a long time. There's been no development other than dirt road to be seen and a little bit of asphalt poured there.
He's talking about where the truck stopped.
Yes, sir.
Right in there.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
And
They
then
just
on both
built-
sides, that
and
soybean.
that's for sale right
runs
now.
all the way back around and
Yes.
back in behind me.
Mhm.
And so I have my share of the deer back there, you know, but I'm not particularly a deer fan. It has 4 legs, I mean, one piece. I'm just saying that, I feel very comfortable. I put a lot of effort into that particular house right there. And, I lived down in Davidson County for years. And, when I found that, I knew it's where I wanted to live for a long time. So I've been up there over 40 years. And have outstanding neighbors in the area in which I live, one way in, one way out. And so I'm pretty defensive of that. And to think about a bridge coming through on the other side to develop all of that, and I thought, well, one day this may come to be. But I hope it was staying so in the future.
Could I say one other?
Yes, sir.
Oh, it's not that, or me anyway, I'm not against development, nice home, it's just that the quality, we want, it's quality.
I
Cause
understand.
I mean, sooner or later, something will happen, like you said, could have been a Walmart sitting over there for all we know, one time or another.
Yes, sir.
Investigations out at 301 Spring Hollow Road. That dead ends at my driveway. That's, in fact, Norm keeps his house very well. He makes me envious of his yard because he keeps it really bad. But, 2 things, just for clarification, mixed residential, what exactly is that? And is there a step, secondly, is there a step between R1 and R5? Something else that they
There's
could,
3 steps.
there's 3, okay, so 2, 3, 4,
Yes,
okay. So as that progresses, those are also possibilities?
it depends on what the
What they-
developer brings,
Okay.
what he's looking to do. Mixed development would be, it could be commercial on the front, that fronts about the road. You could have, apartments, you could have condos,
Okay.
or you could have single-family houses.
Okay. And if I'm reading that right, it is the possibility of mixed residential
Yes,
as well.
Well, planners use terms that, let me just clarify, there's mixed use and mixed density. Mixed use would be commercial, industrial, residential, and that sort, where you mix the different kind of uses, whether they're stores or apartments or homes or whatnot. Mixed density is talking specifically about residential development, and that can go anything from estates to quarter-acre lots to townhomes, zero lot lines, condominiums, apartments, so you get a wide variety there. Anything beyond the quarter-acre lot, if they want to build, say, townhomes or condos or whatnot, that still has to come back for a separate approval by our boards here. So, and those generally require notice and advertisements too. So, we try and get the word out to the public as best as possible. Also, if you watch our website, we do post the agendas at least 3, 4, 5 days before the meeting, so that you can at least see what's coming up. And again, my office, I'll call me if you have questions of what's going on. I'd be happy to give you updates. As we get more information and as they go through the permitting and entitlement process here, before they're ready to, they're literally months, 6 months or more off from moving machinery in and starting to turn dirt at this point. That's assuming everything is approved according to their plan, but oftentimes there's a lot of negotiations, what's in the city's best interest, what's in the residents' best interest, and so they don't just come in and say, this is what we're doing, tell us yes. We're not a rubber stamp community by any means.
and there will be commercial on the front, that fronts Bevel Road. We will
Yes.
not give that up. That will be there. I mean, it just makes no sense to give away all your commercial land, because once it's gone, it's gone.
As long as it's not a liquor store.
It could be.
You mix Al Roos and liquor store, you got a problem.
Yes, sir.
Living where I'm at and looking out the back of my house, I can see the community on the other side of that field. But you don't go that way, you come around and then you turn back left after you've gone down for a half a mile, if that much.
Yes,
And you go back in a large density place there. Will there be consideration probably to looking at roads coming?
it depends on what that developer brings. And when he brings a site plan, it's gonna go before a board, and the board's gonna have suggestions. And they're gonna say, we want this, and we want this, and we want this, and he's gonna say, well, I'm willing to do this. And there's gonna be trade-offs. Typically, what they bring that's not the finished product. There's usually negotiations, and to get, like Michael said, what's in the best interest of the citizens, and what's in the best interest of the city and the developer. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Christine Baxter. I live at 205 Linwood Drive in Crowwood. First of all, most all of my questions have been answered, so that's great. It's been very informative. I was curious to know, if you're not gonna have access through Spring Hollow, where would access be? The goal is to have 2 access roads.
Most likely, it would be out to Bevel Road, and
Okay.
it would have to be across from a current road. So there would probably be one across from Cycle Lane,
Yes, sir.
and there would probably be one across from one of those entrances that they put in on that site on the other side
With
of
the
the
driveways, that was.
Where they used to fly the planes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, like I said, I think all of my questions have been answered. I guess I do just want it stated for the record that I am personally very, very concerned about access through Spring Hollow. I know you say it would be very expensive to develop that, but you said 127 acres, 4 houses per acre. By my calculations, that's 508 homes just in the plot that we're talking about tonight. So if there's enough money there for the developer, they'll find money to make happen what needs to happen.
And that will depend on boards that sit at this table, they have the capability of putting a lot of restrictions on that and a lot of upgrades on, if that was to be an option, we can upgrade them out of that thought just on Spring Hollow. That's why I say there's a lot of negotiations to go on.
That's perfect, and I don't wanna be a broken record, I think I think most of us are Quillwood right here. Obviously, we are proud of our neighborhood and we care about it and we want to maintain the good thing that we have.
We normally have a lady sitting here from council.
Okay.
She usually sits
Perfect. Again, like Mr. Mullins, I'm not opposed to development, you know, I think that it's great, Millersville is a great place to live. We just wanna make sure that the good thing that we have going continues. Yeah.
And I can promise you, not much that goes on in your neighborhood is gonna get past this lady.
I appreciate that.
Anyone else? All right, I'm gonna close that public hearing. The next one's ordinance 18-704, amend the 2018-19 fiscal year budget ordinance number 18-697 to provide funding for the construction of the storage building for the Public Works Department. Now open for public comment. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Item number 4, approve the minutes from July 17, 2018 regular commission meeting. Call for a motion.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of July 17, 2018 regular commission meeting.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 5, approval of the minutes from the August 6, 2018 special call commission meeting. Call for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes on the 6th, 2018 special commission meeting.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 6, approve the July 2018 financial report. Call for a motion.
Make a motion to approve July financial report. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 7, second reading of ordinance 18-701, rezone 7721 South Swift Road, a single parcel from Robertson County map 126, parcel 54.00 from commercial C1 and residential 1 to residential R5. Call for a motion.
Make a motion to approve second reading of ordinance 18-701.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Just for the record, the planning commission voted on the majority and recommended rezoning of this parcel to residential time, July 10th, 2018.
Further, we'll take a vote. This will be a roll call vote. Commissioner Gregory?
Aye.
I vote aye. Commissioner Doris? Motion passes by a vote of 3-0. Item number 8, second reading of ordinance 18-702, rezoning a portion of a parcel on Bethel Road located east Interstate 65, known as Robertson County map 126, parcel 79.00 from residential R1 to residential R5. Call for motion.
Make a motion to approve second reading of ordinance 18-702. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion?
As for the record, the planning commission voted majority recommended rezoning this parcel to residential R5, July 10th, 2018.
This too will be a roll call vote. Commissioner Gregory?
Aye.
I vote aye. Commissioner Doris?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Item number 9, second reading of ordinance 18-704, amend the 2018-19 fiscal year budget, ordinance 18-697 to provide funding for the construction of the storage building for the Public Works Department. Call for motion.
Make a motion to set ordinance 18-704. I'll second that motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? This too will be a roll call vote. Commissioner Gregory?
Aye.
I vote aye. Commissioner Doris? Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Item number 10, authorize additional vacation carryover for the city recorder and city manager. Call for motion.
I make a motion, we authorize the additional vacation carryover for the city recorder, interim city manager.
Second. Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
As I read on that right there, you said you're gonna use that for the year, right?
Okay. And for the record, it is just 5 days. All right. Any further discussion? Everyone, call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 11 is citizens' comments. Do you want to have anything you want to say? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Carrie Lewis. I'm the active administrator down at the Millersville Library.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I just wanted to continue Ginger's tradition of giving a good news report for the library. I have some packets if you're
Sure.
interested.
Yes, ma'am.
The front page includes pictures from July. Most of them are from our summer reading party. We had a total of 110 people participate in our summer reading program this year. It's good. We were very excited to see that. Everyone was really excited for all the programs and to read. And Ginger, I think, mentioned at a previous meeting that we had a lot of support from the local businesses and community for prizes. And we also really want to thank the fire department. They brought their fire truck out to the party. And the kids really loved it. We still have some come in and ask when the fire truck's going to be back. And the fire chief has actually been really responsive and wants to participate in the programs that the library offers in the future. So we're really excited about that. In July, we had a total of 1,605 votes circulated and 336 people attended all of our programs. So that's great.
Yes, ma'am.
August, I did the August calendar on there. We've slowed down a little bit to give the staff a break and also let everybody get back in the swing of their school routine. But we've started our reading recovery program back up. It started tonight. That's a multi-sensory program for students in 1st through 6th grade who are falling behind on their reading and phonics. And in September, we're starting a homeschool program on Wednesdays, 10:30 to 11 for ages 4 through 6. They're gonna have a theme every week and they're gonna have stories read to them and then discussion questions and a little activity to go along with it. And then we're also starting, an ESL English learning class for adults every Saturday in September. We've got a lot of good response from that, from locals and then also people who do ESL classes in like Millersville or in Nashville, and they've offered their support and help with those classes. We're also partnering with local preschools to bring reading programs to the students there. It's kind of the same thing as the homeschool class will be. We've had 6 preschools say that they were interested in 4 of them actually have already confirmed, so we're excited to get that started. And that's it. That's pretty much everything that August has done so far.
We appreciate your updates.
Thank you.
All right, city manager's comments.
I don't have anything other than, the September work session. If you guys decided on a day.
September work
3rd is on, Monday. And was it normal to have?
Just have it that it's on Tuesday, or following
Was it on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday? Was it
Following.
Monday?
Monday.
Okay.
All right, commissioners' comments, David?
I don't have it.
The only thing, you have something?
I have a couple of things for you.
Go right ahead.
Okay. And I posted a public notice on the front door as well as on our website FEMA is updating their flood insurance rate maps. More than likely they'll be adopted in spring of 2019. But they're holding one of their first public open houses for the revised map. So if you all know anybody, or if you live in or near a floodway or a floodplain, some of these lines are being redrawn by the feds. They have a whole lot better and more accurate data. I don't think anybody in Quillwood has a flooding issue in a floodplain or a floodway, but we have other parts of the city that do. So FEMA is encouraging public participation. There'll be a comment period coming up, I believe, for 90 days, but it's important that we get this information out to our residents, especially the ones that are impacted by any of these changes in the mapping and all that. And then secondly, I want to hand out, and this is just a take home, we have at least 2, if not 3 properties that are looking to annex into the city. The state in 2015, the legislature updated the rules and the regulations for annexing. Fortunately, in this case, these residents are, or not residents, rather, these property owners are willingly giving or voluntarily giving consent to annex in. They're looking for our municipal services, and in particular, they're looking for sanitary sewer, which is not available in the unincorporated areas. Additionally, the county health departments are further restricting permitting septic systems. And so we have folks starting to look to come into the city to get access to our sanitary sewer. We have plenty of capacity for them, but I wanted to hand this out. This has MTS's best management practices, as well as a list of procedure. And on the back of that handout, you'll see that I've developed an application for annexation that is very specific in that we document that the owners are giving voluntary consent, to the point where all of the owners literally have to sign and have notarized their agreement to annex in. We don't want any of these annexations to be vulnerable to a court challenge. So we're making sure that we dot i's and cross t's, but I wanted to bring you all up to speed. You'll see that there is a defined process in there, and it's important for you all to know because you'll be taking part in that process as we move forward to annexing these properties. That is it, sir.
The only thing I have is, I'd like to thank all y'all for coming out tonight, and I'd like to thank from the library. Are you gonna be the new overseer of the library?
I applied.
Well, good, good. The library has been a great addition to the city. Most people do not realize just how many books go through that facility every month, so, thank you. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Across from the soybean, there on the road, after 5, they started development there, but nothing's been done.
He prepped the site to build, he was gonna build a gas station there, and for some reason, he changed his mind, and the property is currently up for sale.
Who is he?
Day Enterprises.
Wayne Day. Wayne Day.
He owns all that up and through there,
He does.
company and everything.
Yes,
Good man, nice.
Yes, yes, sir.
Good family.
Yes, sir.
I have a comment about that particular property. And y'all probably already addressed this, I just had this a meeting, why? But there's 2 telephone poles that sit on that property that he dug around.
The light company.
And they kind of look vulnerable to me on a real windy day in a wet situation, getting rolled over and cutting off our electricity.
He has probably already made contact with the electrical company, they're probably just behind.
Yeah, I know it's been that way for some time.
They tell him how far to leave
Yeah.
dirt, so it surely won't fall.
I know, well, our subdivision could be out of electricity one day, well,
Thank you, Bill.
All right, I'll call for a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. We are adjourned.
Will we have another one of these
Yes, sir. We have,
monthly?
we have a regular meeting every month, third Tuesday. Yes, and, we also have a work session every Monday, the first Monday. Now, next month will be the second Monday.